Welcome to Good Horses, Stories of the American Quarter Horse. We're excited to bring you the stories of the horses that have made a lasting impact on some of the most legendary figures in the quarter horse industry. Each episode, we'll hear about the horses that challenged them, taught them, and left a special mark on their lives. From remarkable lessons to unforgettable rides, these are the stories that celebrate the heart, soul, and horsepower of the American Quarter Horse. This podcast is brought to you by the American Quarter Horse Association. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Good Horses podcast. Today, we're visiting with one of the most accomplished horsemen in the industry, Corey Cushing. I mean, from multiple AQHA World Championships to countless NRCHA Derby wins and Futurity wins, and of course, recently being named the first ever NRCHA $4 million rider. I mean, we're just so stoked to have you here. So thanks for being here with us.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes, and on the other side of our camera is our producer, Miss Michelle Bonds, who will be joining us as well. So here on Good Horses, we're just going to talk about all the good horses that have been the heart of your success. Good ones, bad ones, everything in between. But we got to start from the beginning. So we're going to rewind to the beginning and talk about the ones that got you into the quarter horse world. Like, how did you get your start in the equine industry?
Oh, well, we'll take it back to my very first quarter horse. Before that, it was mostly Appaloosas. That's where mom used to show quite a bit. And then my first couple quarter horses was a D-bar strip and Wink and Streaker. Can't really remember the exact year that we got them, but I would probably have to say like 88 or 89. And then we got them from Steve Williams out there in Magna, Utah. And D-bar strip was, my reining horse. That's mostly where I grew up, just doing the reining. And anyway, showed him a little bit. And then when it was time to upgrade, went on to Too Loose Lena that we got from Doug Milholland at the time. But Dick Pieper had trained her and showed her at the Reign of Futurity and made the finals on her. And anyway, it just kind of takes off from there. So a lot of great ones, that I've been very, very blessed with then and now, and have all got me to where I am today.
Yes. So your parents showed. You said your mother showed.
My mom showed quite a bit with the Appaloosas and did the Rodeo Queen and stuff. And then I grew up riding with Noel Skinner, and that's where D-bar strip, and he was, man of the era that. They did everything. It wasn't as specialized as what it is today. It wasn't like this guy just had reining horses and this guy just had pleasure horses. They did everything. And a lot of those horses, I remember his stud's name was Dr. Burke, and that horse showed in the halter first thing in the morning, and depending on if the all around was going on or whatever, I might do the barrel racing, later on that night, so, those horses, they were, it was amazing, what they did with them back then. And like I said, it wasn't near as specialized as what it is today.
Yeah. One thing I really admire about you is you started in this so young. I mean, at 19, you won your first ever NRHA Open Futurity, and I just think that's mind-blowing. So how was it like having twice as shiny, stepping out into this competitive space?
When I got done with high school, I went down to work for John Slack and Todd Bergen, and along the way, got to ride with Brett. Talking about great horses, that's when Boomer Nick was around, and Dealin' Dirty, Reggae Coyote, Lena Nick, the list goes on and on of all those great horses. Chick Please, that Todd won the Futurity on, and the Snaffle bit was reserve on at the Snaffle bit. But, we get into, 99 when I went to the Futurity, I had, twice as shiny, T-Boo, Colonel Tari. I think those were my three that year, and I made the open finals. That was my first open finals. I actually won the second round on twice as shiny there, and that was after John had made the Snaffle bit Futurity finals on him there at the Snaffle bit. But anyway, those horses, they taught me a lot, and like I said, I'm blessed to have so many horses like that, and they were all made different, if that makes sense.
Right.
Some of them, you had to be careful how much you did just, to keep their minds right. And other ones, some of them needed some tough love from time to time. But, it taught me how to be a better horseman and how to, work with all the different types, not just, well, this one isn't working or that one. I mean, this is what I was offered, and I better make the best of it.
Right, that's what you can do at any moment in time
Yeah,
with the horses
yeah.
you've got. So was there anything in particular that made Twice as Shiny stand out? Was it his mind, his versatility?
Oh, that horse was just an athlete, and I guess he had done the Snaffle bit Futurity, and then we go to the Reign of Futurity, and he was pretty good in the first go, but then it was a run-in pattern for the second go, and I remember I still got the video, going in there and just, the way he stopped, the way he turned, circled. We ended up marking a 227 and winning the round, I guess it was right there in that moment that I felt like, not that I had made it, but guys looked at me a little bit different. I could stand up a little bit more proud. I just wasn't the little, assistant just trying to get by. They had a little bit more respect for me after that. So that was a very proud moment in my life that only helped boost, me and to keep me going where I'm headed now.
Of course, you proved yourself. And then from there, you started getting into the cow horse world with
Yeah.
CD Diamond, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, went out on my own, was working there in Indio, I had CC Spin Cycle was one of the first ones I had, that got me my first NRCHA championship. Kathy Frank owned him. She had raised him, took him to the world show, made I think it was the junior cow horse finals on him. And anyway, we fast forward a little bit and, get into CD Diamond. That horse, he was what I'd call like a 15-minute, 20-minute horse. He did better when you got on him and went to work on something, but didn't stay for a long time in that particular area. You kind of had to leave him, a little bit almost thinking a little bit too much, because it would help him pick up and get going the next day. He was very laid back and very cool, but at moments where you got to be soft and quiet, and then there's got to you ask him to do something else, there's got to be a lot of electricity and energy behind it. I felt like I was always having to pick him up, so he was better if he was left just a little bit, like maybe nervous, but like thinking about it. So
Does that mean
Yeah.
the horse is more smart if you got like leave him
Well,
on the-
but some horses you can get on and, you walk around and talk with your buddies and, then you go and do something and then you come back and, he was better when he stayed motivated, okay, let's work on this. All right, it's done. And I also had to be careful with him too, because, summertime and getting ready for the Snaffle bit Futurity and being, the days are really hot. We're Arizona, they're constantly hot. Yes, there's moments where it's cooler, but a lot of them horses, they need a chance to refresh. Well, out there, there was just a small window,
Mhm.
and so still today, I look at it, whether I'm here in Texas or Arizona, that, you got to pay attention to, what that horse, how much that horse needs and what you need to put your focus on and all the different things that we've got to do. It was better if you were to break it down in pieces rather than trying to do everything in one day,
Right.
and, I'm big on days of 3. And so, with that kind of mental mindset and, I felt like things would pick up quicker, and I wasn't wearing him out to where I didn't have a horse when I got to the Snaffle bit or, any major at that point.
Right. So, did you know early on in your career, once you were riding these incredible horses, that you'd be riding some of their colts later on? Like, for example, CD Diamond, you ended up riding SJR Diamonds.
Diamond Mist, yeah,
yes.
yeah. His nickname was Punk. He been fortunate enough that when John and Brenda, have called me for numerous years and asked me to go and look at the yearlings, he was one of my very first ones that I picked out in the pasture. And of course, being out of the Great Mare Cat Mist, I don't know, I kind of looked at it like, how great was his father and what he had done for me, and then being out of this really good mare and he that horse was he was like his dad in some ways, but I don't know, maybe just had a little bit extra to him in other spots, his dad, of course, was awesome and what he did for me, but Punk, he was he was built and made a little different, and they all are, but as far as like his reactions to things, and had such a neat presence, whether he was in the herd work or the reined work, I think it really, stood out. And then, I'll never forget, the Futurity finals when it was one of the first years that we had moved it back here in Fort Worth, and the cattle were just so crazy for whatever reason. They were that we were inside the Will Rogers. The energy was big. The cattle were just very blown away, the loud music and what it, for what it's built up to. But, I remember watching guys go down the fence, Luke Jones, being one of them. And, he got 2 or 3 cows, and that was before we had after 2 cows, you can go and, take a break. That was after or before that rule had come into play. And so anyway, here we are at the end of the Snaffle bit. It's a finals. I'm sitting in a good spot, but it's got to be good. And when that cow come out and they went to offer me a new one, I was like, you know what? I can either make this work or I can pull up and probably just end up, floating around out here and getting a decent score. So I don't know. It's one of those in the moment things that you've just got to, pick up and take, and it's what you feel best, while you're on that horse's back and what they're thinking, because sometimes those really hard and challenging cows, because, the fence work is one, at the end of it, and the circling the cow and being in complete control, it's not won by just, boxing the cow on the end, so, a lot of things go through your mind there, but anyway, getting back to the horses and just, kind of reliving that moment, he was he was a lot of fun there, and it just, like I said, it was just a gut feeling, and he gave it all he could, to help us finish and end up the way we did.
Yeah, so I have to ask, his nickname was Punk. Did he live up to that? How did he get it?
You know what? He was just cool all the time, and he's still a punk today, now he just, is living the good life and in the green pastures and stays pretty busy. And, he just kind of walks with a little extra attitude at times, but it was never, ever put in like a bad or aggressive way. He's just kind of a punk all the time.
I get it.
Yeah.
I feel like we've all got one of those.
You bet.
So.
Yeah.
Do your kids get to ride him?
No, I mean, I think they sat on him with me, this was, before Caleb was really into it, and then Capri might have just been a baby. But anyway, no, they've, they all share the highlights with me, and it makes it great.
Yeah, that's the cherry on top for sure. But I feel like a conversation with you would not be complete without talking about Hot Rod. And that's something I failed to mention in your intro was, of course, you're a multiple-time World's Greatest Horseman winner. So let's talk about Hot Rod and like what made him stand out in the pen.
I don't know. I guess it would just have to be that whether you were in the practice pen, you felt like you could do anything on him. And whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing, like he was going to try to get better. He was going to try to find you. And he was, and the power and the strength that, he put behind everything, and as pure as his mind was, that's what made him stand out. You could offend him very easy. And I promise to this day, you could walk in his stall and he would scatter to the back like someone just got done chasing him with a pitchfork. But he just had that much respect for you. And once once he knew that you were his friend, I mean, you could conquer the world with him. And that's honestly what he felt like when I was on his back. There was the World's Greatest win on him, which means so much, and just so fitting for that horse because he can and was so great. But like I said earlier, it was the other moments too where it was when I marked a 27 or a 28 on him down the fence at the Derby. His 3-year-old year when I ended up third on him, right behind Diamond Mist. And anyway, him and it was fun, especially during the Derby years when him and Scooter Cat, because they're the same age, we're battling it out all the time. And so anyway, Scooter Cat got us at times and we got them, but two incredible horses. And Hot Roddy just, I don't know. I've been blessed with so many, and they've all got certain characteristics or times or moments that I'll never ever forget. But I mean, that horse just made me feel like I could conquer the world. So pretty neat horse.
Those are pretty special.
Yeah.
So out of the 3, correct, that took you to World's Greatest that you've won the title on, right? Is there one that you relate more with, or you just feel fits your style more, or you just get along better with? Are they all just so even?
They were all perfect.
You're like, they're my horses.
I mean, they were all great, but all different too. I mean, Spoonful of Gold. I don't know if you could draw a prettier horse, with his flaxen mane and tail and the way he carried himself, and he I don't know, just always gave me that feeling that that he could keep going on, and he'd be with me the whole time. Him, and then Sanita Lena Ray. So I didn't have him when he was a younger horse. Nicholas Bartholomew had him and did a great job training him. And then when I got him, we were going into his bridal years, and that horse, he was so strong and so physical. He was built very, very level. And at times it would, hinder him, just because his front feet would maybe get out in front of him at times. But the way he could get himself put back together and come back to me and get to the places he needed to be. And that horse was always just cool as a cucumber. I mean, he was always just really good minded and nice and chill. And then Hot Rod, he was, he'd get in a little kid's pocket and then, step up and, I don't know, make you feel like, again, you could just conquer the world with him. I mean, but he took it. You also had to be careful. He's one of the very few studs that you could scare him very easily, but if he trusted the situation in the moment, it would only give him more confidence to do his job better. And if that meant, trying to hurt himself, he would.
Oh.
Yeah. There was a lot of times where, you only needed, say 10% here and he'd give you 70, and sometimes it would help him and sometimes it would hurt him because, when he could just, if it, you don't have to get that deep in the stop to turn and come back with the cow, but he had put himself there just because that's what his job was, and that's how he felt that he needed to control the situation. So whether he was, going off of what I was asking him to do or it was his own thoughts, I mean, just that they were all incredible. And, it's how they come into your life at certain times, and they all taught me something.
Yeah.
So anyway.
What are some of the greatest lessons, if not the greatest lesson you've learned from riding throughout your life?
To stay very open-minded, have a plan, have a goal, know where you want to go with this horse, know the path that you're going to need to take, but listen to your horse along the way. Horses change as they, get older, mature, and, I think a guy's, whether you want to call it a relationship or program with that horse, needs to change along the way too. There's some that, you gotta, maybe, put your foot down and kind of have some tough love on at times. And that's just the way they need to be rode. But then after a while, they can get to thinking like, well, when am I doing the right thing? And so you've got to be very careful that, you don't, that you've still got respect. We're teaching them to do this, but make sure that you also have given them a way out so that, the pressure and release that they can, because these horses will change, if that makes sense. If you just stay focused on one thing constantly all the time, and as far as, this is the way I need to grind on this horse, or this is what I need to do, I think after a while that horse gets to feeling like there isn't a win or there isn't a way out, or why is this relating? Even the 3-year-olds, going into futurity season, or in the middle of futurity season right now, like it's fun to watch them change when you go to the show and actually show them, and whether it be a week or 10 days or whatever it is, or just a weekend show that, all right, this is why we're practicing for the herd work to set up for this situation. Here's the rein work. Here's the fence work. When you put all that together, the good horses, start to relate like, oh, this is why we're drilling. And you can feel them, step up and be even more of a partner along the way. And so, like I was saying, all those horses taught me something, how to listen to the horse and, pay attention to different things that change over their career.
Right. Well, that's got to be so rewarding. I mean, because you've taken them from, just colts or fillies and made winners out of them. So, wow. What an accomplished feeling.
Can I ask something real quick?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of going off, you were talking about, Bobby asked about lessons. Earlier, you mentioned that you're big on the days of 3. So I'm curious what that concept is.
Okay.
Will you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So years ago, I went up to Benny Gatrone's all the time, but I would always stop before the Snaffle Bit Futurity, and I always needed to be there 3 or 4 days beforehand because of the days of 3, and he taught me that. And this is the reason why. The days of 3, so whatever you're going to work on, whatever needs to get better, the first day you're going to introduce them to it. You're going to play around with the idea. This is the way we're going to go about it. There's going to be pause, there's going to be break. You want to quit when it's better or when you feel like you've engaged there. Okay. So the second day you come out, hopefully they pick up on it. You touch up on it some more, caress it, whatever it is. Okay. There's your quit. By the third day, you should feel like the first time you go out there and ask them to do it, that it is better or the problem hopefully is gone. So that's what I call days of 3. So during the training process, whether it be working cattle, doing the reining, whatever, the spin, the first day we're gonna teach them just how to step and go around and so on and so forth. By the second day, and quit while you're ahead and they've got energy and the willing to keep moving forward. Quit while you're ahead. Quit with them wanting to do more. The second day, hopefully you get to pick up. It's a tighter spin. It's in a, smaller circle and, the pivot foot staying still, so on and so forth. And by the third day, you should feel like you've really accomplished it or taught that horse to spin. Now, I know that's, a very vague like breakdown, but that's honestly like what, no matter what it is going down the fence, like look at it in days of 3. Don't look at it like I've got to create this all in one ride. Give that horse a chance to, put some, let's just call it foundation in there so that he understands why he's going to this place rather than me just having to be in more control to make him do this maneuver.
That's really interesting. Is it something that you also, so obviously you're talking about putting a new skill on a horse potentially. Is it something that you can also then use for older horses as well?
Oh, sure. Sure. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's say, all right, we'll use the older bridle horse. And let's say this one's been shown quite a bit and he's getting strong going around the corner to go down the fence, kind of pushing through, a guy's hand. Well, okay, so they bring this horse to me or they send it to me. All right, this is the problem. So I go to work it and I come around the corner and here goes this mess. He's running through my hand. We're getting in an argument. And so whatever direction I'm going to take, whether it be pulling him around into a circle, switching, going to the other side of the cow, whatever's playing out right there, or whatever that feel is, I'm going to work on that. Okay. The second day, hopefully he's not near as strong. If I don't feel that it's not at least a little bit better by the second day, I might take a little bit different approach and maybe back up because there's no sense in going, to keep moving forward if this obviously didn't have any effect on what his mental status is as far as going around the corner with the cow, and, hooking up to that hip and truly him rating that cow, not just waiting for me to give him the signal to go. So anyway, and then we get into the third day, hopefully you can come around the corner and, I don't mind guiding and helping and placing, but when you're taking the bridle reins out of my hands and still, well, then I still need to regroup and back up, but you've got to respect that too, because, that horse maybe has a different boundary or a different place that he likes to be going down around the fence, and with all the split decisions, it doesn't bother me that a horse is thinking not necessarily be strong and get ahead of him, but be ready for, just that little glimpse of, hey, I might need to turn you loose here and you better have your feet ready to pick up and get going, So I don't know, just a bunch of different ways that I look at it, but I try to always go back to that days of 3, and that's what helps me the most on the young ones building and the older ones touching up on stuff.
I think that's really interesting because we can all, I think, fall into a trap where we will focus so hard on like the one thing that the horse isn't doing right or that we want to teach him, and then we just keep drilling it. So thank you for explaining that because I think that's such an interesting concept.
Absolutely. Another thing I like to use is I use the word better a lot. Like, was that horse better today? Was it great? No, not yet. But yesterday you couldn't stop it all. Today, he's going down there and he's making an effort and doing it the right way and running straight or whatever. It's better. Well, let's quit. Like, let's maybe do, 1 or 2 more, but it's better, and I see people a lot of the time like, it's just, I haven't won the reining Futurity yet. Well, you're not going to, let this, let's just do building blocks. It was better. Let that horse know that he's at least trying to do the right thing and trying to stay with you. So you don't ever be afraid to quit when it's better, not perfect.
That is excellent advice.
Yeah.
Advice I could use for myself. So
Yeah.
Right. That is so great. And when you were explaining that, we all know that cow horse is such a meticulous event. And
Mhm.
I mean, you've got to have that horse right there in the moment when you need him at the drop of a hat. So in your career, has there been any close calls or wild runs that you'll never forget?
Oh, yes, lots. There's been so many times I've come out of the pen going, well, that was so dumb that you were practicing that when this is the situation. Or, yeah, horses get strong. I've been embarrassed a lot. I've had horses kick out during circles. I mean, there's so many things, and that's a whole nother road that we'll talk about another time. But, it's, the failures at times when you think you're doing the right thing, only make you better. Something bad happened, good. You learn from it.
Exactly.
You get to think better. You get another chance to, do it different the next time. I don't know. There's so many great runs that I sit here and think about with all of my horses and moments, but then there's also, the times that, you felt like you've prepped and you couldn't done things any different, and, you worked so hard, and, you go in there and something happens, whether it be down the fence or in the rain work or whatever, that you walk away from, and it's disappointing and so frustrating. And, why is this so hard? But it is hard. And if you want to be good at it, you better just, maybe be mad at yourself, but you better pick up and make yourself better, because there's somebody else out there that is getting better. So stay mad at it, or, cuss the judges or whatever. But at the end of it, get better, good. You learn something.
Right. I
So,
mean, you never truly fail. You just learn.
yeah,
So you
you
can
got
always
it.
use it next time. So talking more along your career and just we're rolling down the line.
Mhm.
WR Iceman, he pushed you over the $4 million limit. So, I mean, not a limit, but mark for sure. So what does it mean to have a horse like this in your career at this time?
Well, have you ever tried to manage a torpedo that could go off at any time?
Actually.
I call him my little mini torpedo. He's a little cray-cray, but I love him so much, and his personality, I know exactly how he's gonna be every day. There isn't Iceman that gets bored a lot with boring stuff, but you got to ride him a lot so that he can be mentally ready to show. He can go in there and do some really funky, funny stuff that you just shake your head at, like, how do I even fix this? But you've got to you've got to outsmart him a little bit of reverse psychology, and, mill around. And we spend more time just riding him and doing stuff on him rather than really drilling him, because, he knows what's coming. He knows how to do it, but he'll get to thinking like, I got to be better. I got to be more aggressive, in the stop, or, I need to take off too soon. Like, there's so many things, and like, you could sit there all day and work on it till, you get mad at him and just be like, you're going to do this. No, you're just going to wear him out and break him down, And so you've got to work on it without him knowing that you're working on it, if that makes sense, just really get inside of his mental state, because, if anything, he just thinks too much. And but when that horse has times when it all comes together, that horse is so much fun, and he's so powerful. There at Run for a Million just a few weeks ago, and having the Dunn family there with us, and which have been huge supporters in that arena. When he was I think 4 years old, we were one circle away from winning the Stallion Stakes. And I don't know if he overreached or what. We've watched replay video numerous times where the ground just pushed away just enough. But, when he fell down there circling, that was really hard with him. But, for that horse to come back and made the world's greatest finals on him, and then, he's taken me to the Run for a Million the last 2 years, even as a 6-year-old. That horse he keeps trying. He's never, ever going to quit. He's always going to keep moving forward. No, he's he's awesome. But yes, he is my little torpedo. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. So, with his personality, I mean, you said you have to be a little patient with him, you know?
hmm
Is there any little menacing quirks that you love about him? I mean, obviously he gives his all, but you said, he's a little torpedo. Like, I want to talk about that a little bit more. Like, what's one of your
He can
stories you
just
have?
get so fast, so quick, and
Yeah.
that's why he's my little torpedo. He is not gonna hurt anyone. If
Oh,
anything, he's scared of you. Like he gets uptight and real tense. And
yeah.
again, I think the great ones all have just a little quirk to them.
Yeah.
They've all got a sensitive feeling. Thinking back, Reminick Moonshine, Kylie Knight's horse. Well, it was Rice back then when she was showing him in the youth. That horse was so kind and so easy, and anyone could be around him. But I promise you, if the vet drove onto the place, not even coming to the barn, but you could just smell that vet truck come in, you weren't going to catch him. He hated the vets, and whether it was just the needle or whatever, at times, during vaccinations or whatever it may be. But, that horse, that was his big quirk. I was telling you about Hot Rod, jump to the back of the stall and scatter and, act like you just been chasing him around. That was his. Iceman, even, I mean, we just got back from a month-long road trip, but I promise you, get him out right now and tie him up to the tie rack and just go to throw a saddle on him, he's going to act like he hasn't been rode in 2 years. He's just that funny and just, but if you just take your time, ease around him, be cool. He gets most nervous when like you're nervous around him.
Right.
So you've got to ignore it, but respect it. I know that sounds crazy, but you've got to, like, for me, I get along with him better than some of the girls do. But you just have got to go at him and stay smooth and moving and understand that there is a switch or a trigger where he might explode. But if you just kind of like tiptoe around him, it almost makes things worse,
Right.
So, it's just understanding and reading the horse. Again, he would never hurt you. If anything, he'd be scared of you. And then once you guys become friends and he, goes around there a couple times at the long trot and calms down, I mean, you've got him for the rest of the day,
Right.
But no, he spends a lot of time sometimes just getting exercise. I'll ride him and then I'll just turn him out in the turnout pens, and then he plays so hard. He's one of them horses that, he would be better if he was turned out all the time, just to where he could walk himself down a lot. But we got all the, his coat's got to look good, and it can't be dusty, all the show horse stuff that I want my horses to look like. It's hard to do that when they're turned out like that. And nothing against, for the horse to do it. It's actually better for some. But anyway, he's best if he can just kind of keep himself walked down at times.
I will say the first time I ever met you was at the Performance Horseman. And oh my goodness, I've never seen a horse as shiny as the one you rode in 2024, which was SJR Diamonds. Oh my gosh. Like if a horse was ever a disco ball, it was that one. And I was talking with my coworkers. I was like, I just want to touch it, but I can't. Yeah. So your grooming regimen is out of the world.
Well, thank you. I take a lot of pride in all of my horses looking fantastic like that. And, for me just to stand back and look at them and, see them, look that good. I mean, it makes me smile because it does take a lot of time and effort and energy and all the things that go into it, not just on the riding side of things, but all the aftercare and before care and the icing the legs and the, hours of, washing and clipping and, all the things. But, I learned that from when I was really young, from Noel Skinner and Bob Avila. I mean, Benny's horses always look good. I mean, there's a lot of pride in that when your horse, looks like that. And when he goes into, a place like that and people stand back and look at him and just are in awe, like how pretty they look. It holds real high for me. I want all my horses to look like that.
Of course. All right, so I'd like to touch on the AQHA World Show and the horses that carried you there and brought you a lot of success. So the first one that we have is Rising Starlight.
Oh, yeah.
Super
my
horse.
sweetheart. Yeah.
Yeah.
Miss, Star, we called her. She's still alive, 19, 20 years old, I think. Eric still got her. Heck, every now and then he still ropes a few steers on her. No, that mare, she was awesome. She was so strong. Steve Orth did an amazing job, roping on her, and I mean, she was always a contender, and you always had to worry about her if a run got put together. I mean, she was just that good. She was a little bit limited in the herd work, but her rein work and down the fence, that mare was so quick. And of course, she had the incredible foundation that Jimmy Paul put on her, and no, that mare was a lot of fun. Yeah, that was the kids were just tiny back then, and just Caleb really, and no, that was she was something real special.
Yeah, I can imagine. I bet Caleb loved her too.
Oh yeah, yeah, he loved anything at that time. Yeah,
like any horse. Yeah. And I heard that you did a bridleless spin, sliding stop, everything during the Super Horse Awards. So tell us about that.
Yeah, I got the picture hanging up, and the Duns have got a big poster of it. We just put the ribbon around her neck, and when they announced her, I went in there and slid her with just the ribbon around her neck and turned her around. And I mean, that mare, she was awesome like that. She knew her job. I had all the faith in the world in her, and anyway, that was probably not the smartest thing at that time, but you just kind of get that fun feeling to do it. Talking about bridleless stuff, so there we are at the Sun Circuit, and this is probably 6 or 7 years ago, and gal Miss Shannon Goldwater owns SJR Smooth Rio, and it's as smooth as a cat stud. Same out of the same mom as CD Diamond, Shiner's Diamond Girl. Anyway, we're there at the show, and it's late, and we're doing the senior cow horse, and I go in there to just lope Rio around, kind of school him a little bit for Miss Shannon because she's going to show him in the boxing the next day. Well, you got Shad sitting on the side, Mike Berg, Garrett Cooper, and it's late and dark, and they're giving me a hard time, hackling me and whatnot. And so anyway, I get done, and they go to turn the cow out, and I just reached up there and I took his bridle off as they kicked out the cow, and went up there and I boxed the cow for a while and played around with it. Well, then they didn't have nothing else to say. And then went around and went down and made a fence turn, and then I pulled up and stopped. But that was just kind of fun, and we still laugh about it today.
Right. Everyone will pick on the cow horse guy until he goes bridleless.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So of course, Rising Starlight was a standout. What about The Crowd Loves Me? I mean, this.
Well, his name says it all.
Yeah.
I mean, you love just watching him as he walked by, and then when he could go out there, and that was doing the cow horse on him, and then Lindsay always convincing me to do the ranch riding on him, and the first year I messed that all up by pushing the gate instead of pulling the gate, or vice versa, whatever it was, and anyway, and just being mad at myself, I promised her that I'd do it again the next year, and so anyway, we got to go back and do it again, and of course it's the same pattern. And I remember just before I got to that gate, I looked up, and Debbie Parkinson was sitting right there, and she kind of looks at me like, oh no, he's not looking at it. Like he forgot it again. And anyway, I just kind of winked and turned and went into the pen, and then finished up the pattern. And we ended up, winning the world that year. And that horse was a lot of fun. And, for both me and Lindsay, there's horses that sometimes get along better with the owner on their back rather than me. And that horse always did the best he could with, whatever situation, or, whoever was on his back, and always had such a real cool look to him.
Yeah. I mean, The Crowd Loves Me. I mean, he sounds
That's
like
right.
a crowd pleaser.
You bet.
Yeah. And you said that a lot of these horses have taught you some really special lessons. I mean, One Fine Vintage, this stallion basically brought home the senior working cow horse title. And I mean, each one that you ride is going to teach you a special lesson. Is there any lesson that you learned from Vintage that?
Yeah, Vintage was he was busy-minded horse. He was awesome in all 4 events. Of course, he really stood out in the rain and down the fence. When we get to calling on these horses as hard as we have to, they they get excited. They get ahead of us in the pen. Some of them take it better. It's not that the guy hasn't done his job in preparation, or it's just working through things. I mean, it's just the way it is. I mean, it's hot and heavy inside there, and unless you're just going to be an entry fee, you've got to push your horses to those limits. And Vintage, he got to where, yeah, he was just always wanting to do more. He wasn't done with one thing and he was trying to do the next thing. And, but if you could capture that and keep it inside, I mean, that horse, he was a heck of a ride there. But,
Yeah.
kind of like with Iceman, I kind of had to open my mind a little bit on how I was going to show him. I mean, he knew we showed up to the World Show. He knew that we were there for something big and we weren't just going to be loping around. And so, that night I went in there to practice, and, I'd been there for a couple days and he had been fine, but we go in there to practice and I can just tell, like, he's already amped up about it. And rather than getting in an argument and doing different things with him, I just went and started doing just off the wall random things. 'Cause it's not that I really needed to run and stop him or spin him or, really dial anything in, because you cannot, like, it almost kind of amps him up and makes it worse.
Yeah.
And so I remember that night, like, I just left the arena because there's a whole bunch of people in there and I'm getting in their way. And I just left the arena and I just went over like to barn 6 and down to barn 9. And I went and loped some circles in like the lunging pen there in 3. And I just rode him all over. I went back in there and maybe just loped like a circle or two. And it wasn't, the best or the ideal circle, but I would just do it and quit. And like, you could almost feel him look back at me like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, I know I didn't do that right. And you're supposed to be getting into me or trying to fix it.
Yeah.
And, but I would just quit and just leave it alone for a while. But then I'd come back to it and, but like I was saying, just kind of opened my mind to different ways of preparing these horses. And anyway, I'm more confident in it now on how I go about it. But back in the days when I was getting creative, I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. But what I was doing wasn't going to work, so I had to try something else.
Right.
Yeah.
As long as you don't repeat what you're doing, I mean, that's the when it doesn't work out. Yeah, that's when you know it's not going great. But as far as like your World Show career with AQHA, is there any favorite memory from World Show that you have?
Sipping Boone's farm for sure. When I won the junior cow horse on him, me and Chris Dawson had to have a work off actually, and he was riding Ray's Shine, I think was the horse's name that Carol Rose owned at the time before she sold him. And anyway, I remember having to go back in there. That horse was so powerful down the fence and so fast. We go back in there and I went first and had a good run. And then Chris, it was just kind of unfortunate. He was like draw 14 or 15. He was there towards the end and I was, I don't know, 4th, 5th, something like that. Anyway, my horse had more time to catch a tear. And that horse, he just got hot and unfortunately he slipped and fell down. But I mean, I just remember that moment. And, then I hadn't won the junior cow horse before, and so, again for the Duns, right along with Star. And so that was, he was a fun horse and still is today. I mean, now he's packing little Ricky around and, they're doing good. But yeah, that's another horse that just, he's one of those that he doesn't like to be retired, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like turn him out in a pasture, he'll just pace the fence and just stand at the gate. That's not his life. He's been in the stall. He gets on the trailer every time it leaves to go to a show. And, there's the great horses like that want to keep going. They've got the mind, they just don't have the legs, anymore or whatever, but, that's their retirement is, still feeling like they've got a job
Right.
without breaking them down, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they're union animals. They know
Yeah.
what they're supposed to do.
Exactly.
And I mean, you've had such an accomplished career in AQHA, and now your son Caleb just won his first AQHYA World Championship. I mean, tell us how special that is.
Well, luckily enough, he has won it before.
Oh, he has?
He's won it twice on SJR Diamond Ray.
Oh, okay.
And then this year, Dugan, we call him, he got a little bit sore, and so this younger horse, Talking Scout, we call him Ted. He would just he kind of filled in when we knew we couldn't do Dugan, and it's been fun for Caleb because he got to show him in like the limited age events, and done the boxing derbies on him and stuff like that. And this year being his first year in the bridle, so he showed him in the 2-rein, and it's been good for Caleb to watch him help build this horse along the way. It's kind of like Ted's kind of like the farrier's horse. Like, he's the last one to get rode. His feet might get a little bit long. Like, there's like, this horse should be a lot farther along than what he is, but because he's ours, he's always been at the end of the day, or if we got time or whatever. So he's a little bit behind, but it's been good for Caleb. This horse knows enough, and Caleb's knowing enough now to how he can help, build this horse up, and for it to all come together that day, for it just being like, okay, his other horse, got a little bit sore. And so, we're just going to put Ted in his place. And for that horse to come through like he did was a huge shock. And then he totally made Mom's whole year, I think, by thanking his mom without it being a prep thing from Dad, So yeah, it was pretty neat.
Yeah. The project horse takes it all. That's great.
Right. That's right.
So is there any other horses that we didn't talk about that are special in your career that we need to cover?
How much time we got?
As much time as you'll give us. So.
There's so many. Smart Boons was a big part of my life. When I got him at the beginning of his 4-year-old year, Clear and Tell. I think I rode him till he was 8 or 9, and a lot of good times with him. Raise 'em High, that I won the Futurity on a couple years ago. That horse, he and the owner knows this, so it's okay to say it, but I'd trained him up. He was a nice horse. He'd done his job, but was he my pick that year? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. I knew he could get there, but he was you just had to take it day for day with him. And that horse was, we talk about great horses having quirks. Like, that horse, he was silly. Like, he wouldn't let you put boots on him sometimes. He just kind of
like, my no-nos.
Yeah, no, he would straight up like hold his leg out or up, and like consider pulling back and just be real weird like that. And so, and like, it took you about 10 minutes. Well, finally I don't want to deal with this. I'm not going to chase you around the barn to put splint boots on you again. And so I got to where I just would go out there and start riding him, warm him up, trot him, lope him around, play around with a few things. And then I would just have him there on the side, and I'd go over there and get him. And then when I would stop or work him on a cow or whatever, then I could get off and put him on. And he was fine with it. Like, would stand there loose rein out in the middle of the arena, no big deal. But, he was weird about that moment, and just like, just being a little bit fresh first coming out of his stall. He was weird. And, I'm big on clipping ears. Okay. And having the horses look nice before the show. Well, when he started going to the horse shows, I thought, oh my gosh, now get the drugs, get the twitch, just so I can make him look a little nicer. Well, I turned the clippers on, and of course he pulls back, and, we're going to, then I just took my time, and I got up to where his ears were. Next thing I know, like, his head is like right here, like I'm almost having to lift him up, and he just let me clip his ears, which a lot of horses, are real weird about, I don't know. They, the great ones are just built different, and anyway, for whatever reason, he let me do it, and still to this day, you could walk right up to him and do it and put his head right in your lap. But, anyway, we could go on forever. I just know that I am so blessed by so many, opportunities, and lessons from the horse, the customers that have, let me be part of these horses' lives, and the ones that made it to the show pens, and the ones that didn't. I've had some favorites, in the practice pen that I thought I could conquer the world on, and just weren't good show horses, where we were snake bit. Something would always happen, So there's a lot of those horses that, had the same kind of, share the same stories as what these ones that we've talked about. But, just keeping your eye open and keeping your mind broadened to, these horses can teach you something, listening to the horse, know the goals and the places you got to go. But every single one of those horses have done something to help develop my style, my career, and I just can't thank all of them enough. Love of the horse for sure.
Yes, that's what brings us all
Hey,
together.
Corey, I have one more question. Sorry, I
Yeah.
have a lot of questions. So you talked about the concept of being, better every day, or,
Mm-hmm.
getting better instead of trying to be the best right away. In the early horses you mentioned, the one that like Toulouse Lena and some of those, were there any that really stood out, and what was it about them that helped you be that better in that time period?
So Toulouse Lena taught me how to control a runaway.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, so I picked the right one.
When I was, no, you're exactly right. She was so great and could slide forever, but the hardest part about her was managing her around the end and stopping on the side. She'd pull that bridle out of my hand every time. And so, I mean, it was clear back then, I'm 12, 13 years old, trying to manage, not that she was a runaway, she would just get super, super strong in the pen. And sometimes I could get her, like the first time I could get her pretty much around almost straight, and then off we went. And then, let's say it was a big show and there was multiple classes, that, I was in, there was times where I didn't even make the corner and I'd end up on the wall, and, you just get through it. But I mean, I don't know. I've just always, there for a while. Yeah. I would just get mad and it's got to be perfect. And then when getting mad wasn't fixing anything, that's when I started to go about it different ways. Watch how other guys do it, watch the, connection and, between, my hand and the guide. And rather than just making her move off the neck rein, like letting her feel my hand, but making sure I could get her chin and pull her away. And, just little things like that change the way I rode her at times. There's some horses I need to sit back and ride, let's just call it deep in my seat, and have my feet around them the whole time, and other horses that I need to kind of, sit loose or sit up in front of them and, steer them around a lot, and that's what, a horse like her, that's what she taught me is because she would get strong and, just how to make it look like I'm okay with this, and really you're not, because again, we've got to ask these horses for so much. And, when I was growing up, there was no going to schooling shows and doing this. And I mean, if mom and dad had entered, well, we need to make the best of it because we didn't have a whole lot of money just to keep going to one show after another. And so, we'd go to the, in Reno, there was the West Coast reining, we'd go to the Futurity and Derby every year. I mean, the big shows, but when we entered, it was go there to win, where, a lot of these shows today and all the big events and so on and so forth, you can go there and just say, lope your horse through the pattern, which so many of them need. And it's a big part of my program, but, I didn't have that when I was young. And so I had to get more creative. And I think, but that's helped, as I've gotten to where I am today and, learning how to handle bad situations and making it look like it's okay. But at the end, your horse getting better later on, not that they would just stay there, but all right, now let's go home and work on it. You have to present it this way. Is it ideal? No, but it can't be, it's black. It needs to be white. How are we going to get to that without just turning it completely over? Because you're not going to. You need to find a way to work towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. Good deal. So we've talked a lot about horses, a lot of great ones, a lot of amazing ones. What has been the most memorable moment you've had with a quarter horse? Get a $1 million question.
Oh, definitely the Rising Starlight, when I went in there with just a ribbon around her neck and slit her and the super horse and everything that means. That moment for sure. It was, when I was just, kind of really getting started and had some, good horses, better than I had underneath me. And we talked in the very beginning about just, having respect or feeling like I've got respect for my fellow trainers and whatnot. And I don't know, just something that you can, maybe stand a little bit taller, and so that for sure. I'd been to the World Show so many times and, there had been this or that. And I talked about CC Spin Cycle. Like I thought for sure going there to the World Show and the junior cow horse, like I'd won the Stallion Stakes on him. Like, I've got this. And I got him too tired in the warm-up pen, and I remember going down the fence, and that was the first time that horse felt like he just didn't have no more, and it was because I did too much in the beginning. So, like, that's like, I'll never forget that, like, because that horse, I felt like I could go on for days, but I had overdone it, and not that I had abused him or anything, but just had been on him too long, and, you know, it all comes down to the fence work and getting circled up, and I remember after that second turn, actually after the first turn, I felt his body just kind of, like, not give out, but not be there, you know, underneath me anymore. And it was, and I was more mad at myself than I was at him, because it was my fault for making him get that hot. You know, or not paying attention to how much horse I had before I walked into the pen. So, you know, I think about that a lot these days. But as far as memorable moments, it'd be those two for sure.
Yeah. That's great. So we usually wrap up our podcast with one last question, which is, what makes a good horse in your eyes? Is there any certain qualities, characteristics?
What a good horse is to me, is a horse that just accepts training. Okay? I don't care how good they are. You can train a horse to do anything, and even if it's irrelevant to the area that you're focusing, you can, but if that horse accepts training and has a good mind, you know, that's the most important thing to me. I've gotten along with so many horses that maybe aren't the most talented, maybe, you know, aren't as pretty as the other one, or isn't from the special mom or sire or whatever. But those horses have stood out as far as that they were so good mentally, you know, to be trained, that's what excites me. It drives me nuts when I've got to go and, you know, get on one that I know is not ready to be smart and take training and accept, you know, that for that day. And wherever you're at, whether you're at the show or you're at home just in the building process. But honestly, just the bottom line, like, as much as I love to be on a horse's back, is, you know, as long as they're thinking they're trying to get better, or whatever direction we're trying to go, I could do it all day, every day.
Well, that's incredible, Corey. We have just enjoyed this so much. So
Okay,
thank
one
you.
more question. Sorry,
Okay.
Becky had a question.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You bet. Yeah.
If there was, I'm going to make sure I say this right. If there was a horse, living or dead, that you could go back and ride again, who would it be?
I don't know. There's so many. I can't narrow it down to one, because on all these horses that I've talked about, and even the ones that I haven't, there's so many moments that I would want to relive. I mean, they all had something special to offer. I'm sorry I can't answer that just directly, but it's kind of like, you know, when they ask me, what's your favorite horse? Well, I've had favorite horses in different phases of my life. CD Diamond was my favorite horse when I won the Futurity on him. And then Diamond Mist was my favorite horse. Spoonful of Gold was my favorite horse. You know, they've it changes, and I hope it keeps changing. I mean, there's I don't know. There's so many moments. You know, they're in the World Show pen. You know, whether it be on One Fine Vintage or, you know, Star down the fence. You know, because I can remember, like, their stride and what they were thinking in the moment that we were in, and the position in the arena. I mean, I can relive all those in my mind, and you know, the even the ranch riding championship on The Crowd Loves Me, was it really something that I wanted to do? Absolutely not. Lindsay got him qualified, and I did it, but I had messed it up the year before, and, you know, feeling like I could actually stay on pattern. I know that sounds silly, but in those ranch riding patterns with, you know, the 17 different obstacles and whatnot,
Right.
a lot of that's, you know, too hard for me at times, you know.
I hear
Hats
ya.
off to Bud and, you know, all the people that do it, that can remember all those patterns, but still be in rhythm and in time with their horse to get their horses shown, you know. So anyway, I'm getting a little bit off track here, but you know, I honestly cannot tell you
Right.
the favorite horse or moment, because there's so many different times that I just felt like I was on top of the world with each one of those horses. You know, and I know this might sound a little bit cocky, but I walked in there going, I've got this today, you know, rather than, oh, I hope I can pull this off, which is about 99% of the time. But now that 1%, I guess, are the moments that I want to hopefully keep reliving. Yeah.
Like they say, confidence is a choice.
That's
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Corey, thank you so much for
You
being with
bet.
us.
You bet. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you all for letting me be here. This has been fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Good Horses, Stories of the American Quarter Horse. Because behind every great rider, breeder, or trainer, there's always a good horse. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story.